field? Or the run rules on the diamond at Love's Field? We're giving you the breakdowns, the bets, and the hot takes from the perspective of two former OU Athletics employees. You're listening to the Mainline Podcast with Tyler Burton and Adam Jaquez.
Let's go! Let's go! Go!
Let's go. Welcome to the Mainline. It's OU Texas week, the best week of the year. We're both going down to Dallas. We're going to have a good time. Hopefully we'll have a good game to match a good time that we'll have there as well. But Tyler, welcome in. How are you this evening?
I'm good, Adam. A little under the weather, but there was no chance I was going to miss this week's episode. Not with it being OU Texas. We're here to stay, so excited to touch on it tonight. If there was ever a time, Adam, to have the weekend off on a bye, this was definitely the one to do it. And I think that when we looked at the slate for last Saturday, there really weren't any marquee games. We just kind of thought it was going to be a below average slate of college football games, and turned out to be probably one of the best Saturdays I can remember in my entire lifetime. 5 top 11 teams going down: Alabama, LSU, or Alabama, USC, Michigan, Tennessee, Missouri. God, that felt good to watch Missouri get beat the way that they did. It was must-see TV from 11 a.m. to midnight. So that takes us into this weekend. Obviously, OU Texas, October 12th is a date that has been circled by fans for months all over the country, by college football fans. OU Texas, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, USC, Ole Miss, LSU, Tennessee, Florida. I'm even going to throw K-State and Colorado in there as well, because that's got some big ramifications on the Big 12 race. So get your popcorn ready. It's going to be a hell of a lot of fun.
I do wish this was the 11 a.m. game, though, because it would be perfect to get out, catch the second half of USC Penn State, and then see the entirety of all the night games. Instead, we kind of miss, everything. And there's not really a good 11 a.m. game going on this week. So maybe it'll come back in the future. That's the one game that you do really want, an 11 a.m. kickoff. So we'll see. And it's going to be hot. It's going to be blazing hot. Fortunately, my seats are going to be under the overhang, so I will be sitting in the shade and enjoying that. But hopefully it's a good one to at least sit through the fourth quarter, because Oklahoma, I think right now, is a 14.5-point underdog still at this point. So
hasn't moved.
Pretty big spread for the OU Texas game. And we've seen a lot of one-possession games in this, but really it feels like, you've got a team in Texas, although probably hasn't been tested all that much. I don't think Michigan was necessarily set up to really test the Longhorns. But outside of that, Texas really hasn't played too many good teams, but they've absolutely dominated for the most part across the board. So they've taken care of business, done what they should there. Oklahoma coming in a little shaky on offense, trying to find their footing there. So you've got a matchup here where it's like, okay, it seems like Texas should win this one, but that's not how these games go very often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, rivalry games, I think that OU Texas, really exemplifies that so much more. When you talk about spreads, you talk about over-unders, talk about how these teams have played coming into this week. Wins and losses up to this point, it absolutely makes no difference whatsoever. You can throw that out the window completely. Like you said, the spread is currently 14.5. And Adam, I feel like we've seen, we're 30 years old at this point. I've been to 15 or 16 OU Texas games. You've been to your fair share of them. It kind of feels like anything that could possibly be done on a football field, we've seen that in this OU Texas game. But then also at the same time, Oklahoma, whether it's the Caleb Williams game or it's the Dylan Gabriel final drive, this rivalry always continues to find new ways to elevate and provide, even bigger and better experiences for one fan base or the other. But the 14.5, I'm staying far away from that. I understand why Texas is favored the way that they are, and obviously we'll get into it here in a little bit of time. But they've got a veteran offensive line, they've got a veteran quarterback, they've got one of the best play callers in college football. On paper, this is really not close. And then if you really try and dive into the tape and you look at how Texas has played and you watched how Oklahoma has struggled, particularly on the offensive side of the football, there's a clear path, I think, to where, Texas easily covers that 14-point spread. But obviously we'll touch on that here in a minute. Before we get into the X's and O's, Adam, I want to ask you about kind of the game day experience. Now, obviously, we're used to the 11 o'clock kickoff. That's my personal favorite when it comes to OU Texas, just because you get up early, you get into the state fair, you get your wax cut beer, you get your corn dog, you get to your seat, and it's game time. But the Masters is by far my favorite week of the year in sports, but this one is a close second. And it's so much more than just a football game. The ambiance, the pageantry, 200,000 people inside the state fair, fried foods, roller coasters, wax cut beers, the buses driving through the fair, Bevo, the schooner, the tunnel, Feinbaum is going to be here. Portnoy and Barstool of all people are going to be here. It does not get any better than OU Texas, and that's before the game even kicks off.
Yeah, and my experience this year will be a little bit different because I have a 7-month-old that will be babysat during the game. So I will be in and out like I've been for most games this year, just trying to get in by kickoff and get out as fast as possible after that. So I'll miss that, but I'll get back to that at some point in the future. But yeah, it is. And I guess we had a 2:30 kick last time was 2017. And that was kind of the last time we had, the opportunity to, I think, really enjoy the fair on both sides. And, hey, Harry in the chat there saying fried Oreos, fried Dr. Pepper. Fried Oreos are my go-to as well. So I thought the list of new foods was kind of disappointing this year. It was a lot of savory foods, not a lot of sweet foods. So if you got a chance to check that out, but it wasn't super appealing to me. So I might go back to the classic there with the fried Oreos like Harry's doing, because that never fails me.
Yeah, I'm pretty simple. Get Fletcher's corn dog on the way in. Try and get a funnel cake at halftime or on the exit out of the fairgrounds. So, but yeah, fried Oreos, fried Dr. Pepper. Interesting, Harry. Not sure how that.
That's pretty tame for Texas State Fair, though.
It really is. It really is, and it kind of feels like the last few years it's kind of been pretty common that it's been a little bit underwhelming. Some of the new options in terms of what the food spread is that they offer to all the fair goers and all the people that are going to be going to the game. But Adam, let's dive into this. Obviously, this has been the biggest game on OU and Texas's schedule for quite some time now. Obviously, now that Oklahoma and Texas are part of the SEC, I still think that there's a huge amount of pride, bragging rights. You share, a border between these two states. You've got recruits from Texas that are going to Oklahoma. This one means a little bit more still, even though you've got, the Texas A&M rivalry back in the mix. You've got marquee matchups with Georgia, LSU, Alabama. But to me, OU Texas still takes the cake in terms of being the premier matchup in the SEC. Now, let's talk about Texas's offense, Adam. Steve Sarkisian, Quinn Ewers. You're probably not going to find a better 1-2 combo in terms of head coach and quarterback in college football this year. We thought that it was going to be Kalen DeBoer and Jalen Milroe, and it still might be. Vanderbilt had a little something to say about that this past weekend, but this is a Texas offense that's averaging 45 points per game. That's good for 7th in the country. They do a really good job of being balanced, averaging 191 on the ground, 320 plus through the air. And Adam, the thing that sticks out to me are the scoring margins for Texas's offense. Through the first 5 games, 5-0, they've outscored their opponents 225-35, and they do a great job of setting the tone early with a first quarter point margin of 56-0 so far this season. So I think that that's going to be a huge focal point for Oklahoma on Saturday. You've got to get off to a fast start early in this game. And here's another little tidbit for you. Only 3 teams in college football this year have not trailed in a game yet this season. Army, Indiana, and Texas. So Oklahoma's got their work cut out for them on Saturday.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of talk about this Texas offense and their running game being kind of the weak point. And I guess, it's not as good as the passing game, but their running game has been more than serviceable. And serviceable, I think, is kind of sounds negative, but it's been solid in my opinion. They haven't played the best defenses, but if you look at across the board, like how many more yards per game are they rushing for than that defense allows per game? Against Colorado State, for example, they rushed for 49 more yards. Michigan, 67 more yards. UTSA, 81 more yards than what they allow. 94 more yards than Louisiana Monroe normally allows. Mississippi State, the one outlier there where the Bulldogs held them to 15 fewer yards than what they typically average. So by and large, this Texas team has run the ball well. Is that part of that game script in terms of, they jump out to a 20-point lead and they just run the ball to end the game? There's probably some of that, but while there's not necessarily a running back that, is a Bijan Robinson or somebody even like some of the guys they had last year that kind of make you a little nervous, like there's a game changer, they're still getting the job done. They're still getting 4.5, 5 yards carry, which is more than serviceable. It's solid. We'll see if OU is able to really limit that quite a bit, but they're getting the job done from a running game perspective.
Yeah, and we'll kind of break this thing down position by position, going through both Texas's offense and Texas's defense. But the question I wanted to start with, Adam, is which team do you think is under more pressure on Saturday? And maybe a better way to phrase that is who needs this win more? Because to me, it's Texas and it's not even close. This is the most talented team that Sark has had since he's been the head coach in Austin. Veteran quarterback, veteran offensive line, who has a combined 130 plus starts as a unit, elite running backs, wide receiver skill talent up and down the roster, 9 upperclassmen starting on defense. I think that there is more pressure on Texas this weekend. And now if you're Oklahoma on the flip side of that, I think you're playing with house money this week. All the pressure in the world is on Texas. They're the better, more talented team on paper. They've got the quarterback. They got the O-line. They've got Steve Sarkisian calling plays. Oklahoma has nothing to lose on Saturday. So I think they're going to come out with their hair on fire. They're going to play freer than Texas, especially, early and often on the defensive side of the football. If they go beat Texas, best case scenario, and again, it's a 14.5-point spread for a reason. Nobody in the country, maybe outside of a few, people within the Oklahoma fan base, is realistically thinking that Oklahoma has a chance to win this game. But if you somehow go in there and you knock off Texas, that changes to me how we view Oklahoma's season going forward, and it totally transforms the possible trajectory of how the season plays out. Because if there's anything that we've seen over the last couple of weeks is that those daunting games against Missouri and Columbia, Ole Miss and Oxford, Alabama, South Carolina, LSU, those aren't quite looking as tough, because I think that the SEC is a little different this year, where I think maybe outside of 1 or 2 teams, I think that anybody and everybody up and down this conference could win on any given Saturday, no matter who the opponent is.
Yeah, I don't know if I understand what you're saying with Texas having the more pressure, being the favorite here, but I almost feel like they have put themselves in a position where they can take a mulligan. And maybe that works in OU's favor in terms of Texas doesn't have their foot on the gas, all gas, no brakes there. But Texas could easily lose this one. They can turn around and redeem themselves the next week against Georgia. They could even probably lose to Georgia and still make the playoffs at 10-2, maybe even make the SEC championship game at 10-2, because their schedule is extremely soft. A&M, we'll see if they're able to hold together and look like the same team they were against Missouri throughout the rest of the season. But that's yet to be determined there. But yeah, I kind of feel like there is pressure on Oklahoma in terms of like, hey, you have to be something different than we've seen all year to win this game. Like, that's a lot of pressure on the offense. It's a lot of pressure on the defense to try to hold their own while the offense figures itself out. Because while we saw some good things against Auburn, this offense is not fixed by any means. And a bye week, I don't know how much better you can truly get. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a moment. But I think there is some pressure on Oklahoma. I don't think it's completely loose. I think it's, hey, we got to figure out some stuff on offense, and defense is hanging on for dear life.
Yeah, the margin for error for Oklahoma in this game is razor thin. It's almost a complete zero. Texas can afford, because of how talented and how experienced they are on both sides of the football, they can afford to make some mistakes on Saturday. Oklahoma can't. Now, I do think that when you look at this thing position by position, Adam, and I'm kind of posing the question here: where does Oklahoma have the advantage on the defensive side of the football? And I know I talked about just a few minutes ago the fact that Texas's offensive line has over 130 combined starts. I think that guys like Dominic Williams, DJ Terry, Jaden Jackson, Grayson Halton, and then our edge boys in R. Mason Thomas, Caden Woolard, Ethan Downs, slowing down this Texas offense is going to come down to their ability to be able to shuck blocks and make plays in the backfield. We saw how well Oklahoma played defensively against Tennessee's offensive line, and especially in the fourth quarter against Auburn. So our defensive line is going to have some opportunities in this game, but they've got to stop the run first and foremost. If Texas can get the running game going early in this game, and they can kind of stay on track, dictating the rhythm and the tempo and the pace of this game, Oklahoma's going to get run out of the Cotton Bowl on Saturday. But even as experienced and talented as Texas's offensive line is, it was kind of that way last year. And Oklahoma's front seven dominated for a huge portion of that game. So I don't think that there's any difference this weekend. I think that the guys wearing crimson are going to have some opportunities to make plays this weekend.
Yeah, Texas's offensive line has improved, I think, since last year, just with experience and continuity there. But at the same time, Oklahoma's front seven has improved with the same regard, and with the transfer portal. So, if Oklahoma can bring the same physicality that they brought last year and best Texas in that department, I think you like their chances. Yeah. And we've seen some of that already against Tennessee in terms of 5- and 6-man boxes that OU put out there and was stopping the run with ease, putting Tennessee in 3rd and long situations, and Nico having to work with that umbrella coverage with the 3 safeties. Now, I would expect Quinn Ewers to have more success against that as a more experienced quarterback. And maybe he just chooses to pick up his 3-4 yards running, or maybe he's patient and finds an open receiver at the end of the day there. Yet to be determined there. But I think that's kind of the path and the advantage that Oklahoma can have is if you can go 5- and 6-man boxes, get into 2nd and 3rd and long, and go with that umbrella coverage and make Quinn Ewers have to fit it in tight windows. and potentially turn the ball over, that's where your advantage is for this defense. And we've seen Oklahoma prove that so far, at least against Tennessee, the best opponent that either of these teams have faced.
Adam, are you under the impression that there's any chance that Quinn Ewers isn't taking the first snap at quarterback this weekend for Texas?
I don't see why not. I mean, he was listed as a game time decision, a questionable against Mississippi State with 2 weeks ago. And so I don't know why he wouldn't at this point. I think that's who Sarkisian would like to play. I don't think he wants to throw Arch Manning out there in this particular situation, as good as he has looked at times. He was a little bit stagnant against Mississippi State. So I think he does want his most experienced guy out there in Quinn Ewers. And if that means he's playing through a slight injury, I think that's what Quinn wants to do. I think that's what Sark wants to do.
Yeah, experience is the key word that you brought up there, particularly in this game. And again, Oklahoma on the flip side is going to be starting a true freshman quarterback, making his second ever start as a college football player, and it's going to be right here in the middle of 95,000 people. But with Quinn Ewers, he could have played the last couple of weeks. Now, fortunately, Texas had a pretty manageable schedule that allowed him to be able to take a couple of extra weeks of rest to be able to get back to 100%.
Seems to happen every year for them.
Absolutely, because Quinn, as much as people like to talk about him being the best quarterback in the country and him being a Heisman contender, which he is. I think Quinn's more interested in winning a national championship at Texas than he is bringing a Heisman Trophy back to Austin. But again, he has missed the last 2 games against Louisiana Monroe, Mississippi State, but he is 100% now, and he's going to be ready to go on Saturday. You go back and you watch the film, particularly the Michigan tape, because that's by far the best defense that Texas has seen so far through the first 5 weeks of the season. And I thought he did a tremendous job of tearing up the Wolverines. He's poised. He's got good pocket presence. He can pick you apart in there, or he's got the ability to get outside of the pocket and make any throw on the run. So again, Ewers is making his 3rd start, I believe, in Red River. So the moment isn't going to be too big for him. And he's been on both sides of this game with a 1-1 record. And I'm not sure how big of a rust factor there's going to be. Maybe the opening drive, maybe 2 drives, since he hasn't played in 24 days. But I think that Sark is going to have a good game plan. Whether it's the quick game, there's going to be some easy throws early and often for Quinn to kind of ease him back into the flow of this game. And we'll just see if Oklahoma, much like they did a year ago with the Gentry Williams interception on the second play of the game, we'll see if Oklahoma can get them off track at the very beginning of the first quarter and kind of shift the momentum and shift this to the type of game that Oklahoma is going to want to play as opposed to getting into a track meet with Texas.
Yeah, definitely don't want to do that. And, we haven't seen a long track record of Quinn Ewers this year because of, the injury. I think he's been playing pretty efficient, but I do wonder, does some of the turnovers that we've seen in years past from Quinn Ewers return, or has he completely worked those out of his system and now he's the truly experienced guy that's been around for years, 4th-year player? Has he risen his game? And I just don't know if we've seen enough track record so far this year, because Michigan is good at certain spots on their defense, and they kind of drag you down into the mud and play their style of game. But I think Oklahoma's defense has more overall team speed across the board. It'd be interesting. I'd like to hear some experts in terms of on the edge of the defensive line, how Oklahoma versus Michigan compares there, because Michigan has probably the 2 best defensive tackles in the country potentially, but on the edges, where would R. Mason fit in? Is he better or worse than what they have? Because that could be a difference maker there.
And I think that ties in. That's a perfect transition into Texas's running backs. Trey Wisner, Jaden Blue have been the premier backs in this offense over the last couple of weeks. And, Texas does a tremendous job, not only running the football, but both backs that, maybe even 3 running backs that we're going to see on Saturday. They're very versatile in catching the football out of the backfield. So whether it's swing passes, screen game, check downs, no play is wasted in a Steve Sarkisian offense. And I think if there's any weakness, if you want to get real technical, if you really want to try and find something here with this Texas running back core, I think that it's the inconsistency with their pass protection when called upon. So that's going to be pivotal for Texas this week because, we all know how aggressive Zach Alley and Brent Venables, especially having an extra week to prepare, we know how aggressive they like to be with some of their blitz packages. So we'll see if Oklahoma can figure out a way to get after Quinn Ewers a little bit, maybe create some errant throws, maybe have a couple of picks or maybe a strip sack. Adam, this to me, and I'll throw this over to you before I answer it. With what you've seen from Texas this year, and I know what you're going to say in terms of what the weakness is of this Oklahoma defense, the matchup that I think Oklahoma, what scares me the most is Texas's wide receiver core against Oklahoma's defensive backs. Is that going too far out on a limb, or do you think that there's a little bit of juice to that squeeze?
I mean, I'm not going to take what happened at Auburn where, you got 3 deep passes thrown over top of them. Like that's going to happen to every defensive back pretty much everywhere at some point throughout the season. So I don't know that I'm seeing a trend there necessarily. We've seen some busts here and there. Woody Washington, not to name anyone specific, but
Just couldn't let it go. Just could not let that go.
yeah, for me, I think you kind of touched on this a moment ago, but the way that they use the screen passes and the swing passes to the running backs, I think that's where those cornerbacks can really give themselves an advantage. The way, and we saw Gentry Williams was excellent this year ago, not expecting him to play, but Kanai Walker has a similar frame. I think Des Malone has the ability to do this as well, getting through that initial block from the wide receiver, blowing up those screen passes. So that you can play comfortably in second and long and third and long. And now suddenly you can give yourself a little bit of cushion and not get burnt as deep. So what you do on those early downs really affects your ability to cover in those later downs as well. And yeah, I think it'll get tested. Texas does like to do those really long, drawn out drop backs, rollouts, things like that with max protect and just find the crease in between the safety, the deep zone and the medium zone. That picked us apart several times. So I'm curious to see if Oklahoma's able to better affect that. And, the linebackers dropping back far enough in coverage to help out your corners and your safeties when you're playing cover 3, cover 4.
I think that was interesting too when you listen to Danny Stutzman's interview on the Oklahoma Breakdown, and he was talking about how Texas's offense, some of the wide receiver concepts are a little bit unique. It's not something that you see on a week in and week out basis, and the fact that their wide receivers they run a lot of their routes 20 yards downfield. You might see a 20-yard curl route over the middle of the field by some of these guys that we'll see on Saturday. But I think that this is the complete polar opposite of the Sooners when it comes to wide receivers. Oklahoma's missing their top 5 guys. Texas has 8 different wide receivers with a touchdown catch this year. So it starts with Isaiah Bond, Alabama transfer, very, very good. They lose Xavier Worthy. They lose Adonai Mitchell to the NFL. They come in and they replace them with Isaiah Bond. Fantastic player. Very similar, I think, to Deion Burks in a sense that Texas finds a bunch of creative ways to get the ball in his hands. He gets a lot of touches, whether it's down the field in the short, intermediate passing game, catch or taking the ball out of the backfield on a jet sweep. Oklahoma has got to account for where number 7 is on the field at all times. And oh, by the way, if you want to get cute, if you want to try and take away Isaiah Bond, Texas has the ability to hurt you with other guys like DeAndre Moore Jr., Matthew Golden, Ryan Wingo, who I think that Wingo is probably the 3rd best true freshman wide receiver in the country behind Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith. So, and then, by the way, we talk about speed, and there's going to be a guy. It's kind of an interesting storyline that's kind of flying under the radar. Brennan Thompson playing in this game was on the opposite sideline a couple of years ago. Now he's going to be playing a pivotal role for this offense on Saturday. Texas lets Brennan Thompson go, and he's now playing for Oklahoma, and they just automatically go out there and replace him with a guy in Jonte Cook, who's very similar in the fact that he can stretch the defense down the field. So this is definitely one for me that I'm very concerned about, just because we have shown an inconsistency at times, particularly at the cornerback position, to be able to make plays in the air when the ball is going down the field, being able to find a way to turn our head in plenty of time to be able to break up or possibly intercept a pass. So we'll see if Jay Valai and Zach Alley, we'll see if some improvement has been made over the last 10 or 12 days, because they're going to have to hold up in some of those deep play action shots down the field.
The coaching matchup here is just elite between a Brent Venables and Zach Alley defense and a Steve Sarkisian offense. And I don't know, what that means, who has the advantage there, because I'm sure Texas will show some stuff that, well, I don't know. Maybe they won't. Maybe they won't have a wrinkle that they'll throw out this game, because, I mean, honestly, they might just need to score 20 points to win it. So maybe Sarkisian holds stuff back if he's able to, and plays, somewhat vanilla and just says, hey, we'll try to beat you just by being the better athletes and better team. But I'm curious to see if Brent Venables with extra time and Zach Alley with extra time allows this defense to be in better position to defend the Longhorns, because I would think extra time would favor the defense in that scenario, but
I think so. And, the common theme is, okay, Georgia's on the other side of this for Texas. So does Texas try to hold something back that Georgia can't see, Texas doesn't put on tape? I don't think that there's really any chance that happens on Saturday, because, even though the Texas fan base, even though some of, the media team, whether it's, Anwar Richardson, Jeff Ketchum, Ian Boyd, there's a lot of Texas media people that they've spent the better part of this week talking about Texas's matchups with Georgia, with Texas A&M at the end of the season. It almost kind of feels like they're overlooking Oklahoma because this is so lopsided on paper. And, but at the same time, I can promise you that after what happened a year ago, with all of the celebrations that happened post-game, the Danny Stutzman quote, the T-shirts that were made, the cigar photos, I can promise you that Texas is going to come out here, and if Sarkisian can hang 50 on Oklahoma, I don't think he's going to take the foot off the gas, even though he does have Georgia coming up next week. I think that Sarkisian wants a little bit of payback, and I think that they're going to try and make a statement this week if the opportunity presents itself.
Anything else on Texas's offense versus Oklahoma's defense, or should we move over to the more depressing side of this game?
Yeah, because ultimately this Oklahoma's offense, this is going to be the make or break. This is going to be the difference between Oklahoma finding a way to be competitive and stay this game, possibly winning. Obviously, if all hell freezes over, I don't want to just sit here and say that Oklahoma has zero chance to win this game, because we've seen it time and time again. And I think that there's been a handful of times since 2000. And there was a tweet that I saw, I'll have to go back and check, but I think that there's been 2 instances within the last 7 or 8 years where Oklahoma has gone into this matchup a 14-plus point favorite or better, and they just lost the game outright. So again, throw it out the window. Rivalry games are crazy. Turnovers, special teams, block kicks, punt returns. We've seen all sorts of craziness in this game. So Oklahoma is going to have a chance. It's just a matter of, can we execute offensively and find a whole nother level that we haven't seen through the first 6 weeks of the season? That's something that's going to have to happen for us to have any chance.
As far as like injuries and guys that could be coming back for Oklahoma, it doesn't sound like Deion Burks is coming back. Nick Anderson is in witness protection. Offensive line, like we had everybody healthy and available a week and a half ago against Auburn. So it's like, okay, is Troy Everett at 60%? Now he's at 80%, things like that. Those incremental improvements, hopefully, that you're trying to get there in continuity along the offensive line. But yeah, Harry in the chat asking about Taylor Tatum. Sounds like he should be back. I think that was a concussion. It's funny how we get the injury reports and Brent kind of leans on that to not give out any information. So now we know almost less about injuries because he doesn't have to say anything on Tuesday press conferences. It seems like, it sounds like Taylor Tatum should be back, and that could be a big piece at Michael Hawkins' disposal.
Yeah, and you look at this Texas defense, the number 2 ranked scoring defense in the country, only giving up 7 points per game. That's absolutely insane. That's very impressive no matter who you're playing through the first 5 weeks of the season. And they've done a really good job of limiting their opponents to just a hair over 100 yards rushing per game. I believe that's top 30 nationally. And then the biggest stat that we've seen, and this kind of goes into who they've played, the offenses that have they've faced through the first part of this season. Texas has only given up 121 yards passing per game, which is second nationally. Now, as dominant as Texas's defense has been this year, I still don't feel like we know how good they are, because they have yet to really play a team with a quarterback that can throw the football. The best offenses that they've played are a shitty Michigan squad that can't throw the football. I believe they're starting their 3rd or 4th different quarterback now at this stage in the year, and they still can't throw it. And they played a Jeff Lebby Mississippi State squad that was playing their backup quarterback that couldn't throw the football. True freshman. So I'm yeah. Now I'm not saying that Michael Hawkins is going to go in and just absolutely light it up, and I'm not saying Texas is going to struggle defensively, because what Oklahoma has done on offense the first 5 games of the season, there's really nothing that's been done. There's nothing that they put on tape that would give you confidence that they could go out there and consistently move the ball on Texas for 4 quarters on Saturday. So it's going to be a tall task for Oklahoma, because like you said earlier in the show, Adam, when you were talking about, yes, Oklahoma did win the game against Auburn. Yes, Michael Hawkins did have a couple of big explosive plays. The offense still wasn't fixed. It still wasn't good.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of false hope out there that, okay, Michael Hawkins, he doesn't turn the ball over. He doesn't turn it over. Like, we're good. We got a chance. And really turning the ball over, I know Jackson Arnold against Tennessee, awful. Against Arizona, awful. Against Temple, Tulane, and Houston, turnovers were not the problem. We just couldn't move the ball. We couldn't run the ball. We couldn't throw the ball down the field, whether that was Arnold's fault or not. Like, those problems continued with Michael Hawkins. So he had 3 explosive plays pretty much. He had the long touchdown run. He had the long pass to J.J. Hester. He had the long, 25-yard pass to JJ Hester. That was about it. So, his presence on the field has to be able to at least create more opportunities. Jaquez Petaway has to run to the right area for his blocks. Brandon Thompson has to bust his 15-yard screen into a 30-yard screen. Michael Hawkins has to get more 20, 30-yard scrambles. There just has to be a lot more explosiveness. I think Taylor Tatum will help with that, but I don't know how much we can truly expect this offense to get that much better with just one extra bye week there.
Well, I think the good news is that I think for the first time all season long in the Auburn game, you saw the starting 5 offensive line that Oklahoma had put out there for a majority of fall camp. So you would have to think that given the bye week, another 7 days to get healthy, another 7 to 10 days worth of practice for the same unit to be able to, build upon what they did against Auburn, to be able to continue to gel as an offensive unit. You get Taylor Tatum back. Now, I'm not saying that Taylor Tatum is just all of a sudden going to come in here, go for $150 on Saturday and totally fix the running game. It's totally possible. I think he's got the skill set and the talent to be able to do it. But I think that one of the biggest questions that I have, and I think that we're going to find it out pretty early on Saturday, is what schematic changes, if any, does Seth Luttrell and this offensive coaching staff make coming out of the bye week? Are we going to see more quarterback read option type stuff? Are we going to see more misdirection plays, more mesh and drag routes from the wide receivers, more outside zone and counter in the running game? I don't want to look up on Saturday halfway through the third quarter and know that Oklahoma has tried to run the ball straight up the middle through the A gap 10 straight times. You've got to figure out a way to be more creative and throw the kitchen sink at Texas, because this, again, we'll talk about some of the matchups here with Texas's defenders. This is it's not good. It is not a good matchup for Oklahoma. You've got to get creative. You got to find a way to make some explosive plays to kind of, be the ultimate equalizer for what Texas is going to do offensively.
Yeah, wrinkles won't win you this game, but they will give you the opportunity to win the game, in my opinion. And I know 2 years ago, or whatever it was, 3 years ago, Kennedy Brooks on the wrinkle play where he gets the direct snap, fakes the pitch, counters. That is a wrinkle play that won OU that game. But there were so many other plays throughout the rest of the game that were just normal plays that Oklahoma executed properly. And that's what we need out of Michael Hawkins and the rest of this team, is just execute. Run to the right hole, run through the right hole, whether it's a receiver or running back, and just, trust your blockers. Because I think that continuity along the offensive line will help. So that's what I'd like to see out of this team. As far as, and I know this wasn't very popular, we talked about it a little bit last week, but there was a time a couple of years ago where I sat in the Cotton Bowl and I saw Rodney Anderson get a handoff, and I turned to our friend Connor, who was sitting with us at this game, and I said, every handoff that Rodney Anderson gets is a wasted play. And what a fool I was, because he went for like 1,500 yards after that game and the rest of the season there. But I think the same, not the same. Let me phrase this properly. I think Gavin Sawchuk, the time is right for him, because this offensive line, we're getting the same lineup 2 weeks in a row. It's kind of an opportunity for, someone that is able to find the right hole to be in there. I think Taylor Tatum's got some abilities there. I think Gavin Sawchuk has some abilities there. I think it's time to say, okay, hey, if we are going to have probably some more two-back sets, because we have, the depth now coming into this game, we've got a better offensive line. Javonte Barnes, thank you for what you did through the first 6 weeks. We're still going to utilize you, but we also need some of these other guys to show their skills as well at this point.
Adam, I don't think this Texas defense is as good collectively as what OU faced against Tennessee. I think that the Vols defensive line group is way better than what Texas had. Now, obviously Texas lost their 2 interior guys to the NFL a year ago, but I think that the linebackers for Texas, I would put them up there as good as any group in America. And they've got a very good secondary, especially with the offseason addition of Andrew Makuba from Clemson. And you just look at the depth chart, the starting 11, they've got 7 seniors, 2 juniors, and 2 sophomores. And they're 2 sophomores, Adam, one of which is probably top 5 linebacker in the country in Anthony Hill. So this is a veteran, experienced defense that's played in a lot of big games. They won on the road in Tuscaloosa last year. They played in this game a couple of times. Texas is going to be well equipped to go out there and prove a point on Saturday. And you talked about how Oklahoma's offensive line, I think that Bill Beanbo's group, I think that they're going to be able to play well enough to give Oklahoma's, quarterback and running backs and receivers a chance to make some plays. because I do think that, having a healthy Jake Taylor back and having Michael Tarquin out there at the left tackle position, this is another week of practice that Jacob Sexton is going to be able to, have, slid inside at the left guard position next to Branson Hickman. Time is always valuable because it always, it always produces quality results for an offensive line group, is, because you continue to get more reps to get with one another. You're able to communicate better, know who's coming, who to pass off, blitzers to as the play kind of unfolds. But I think that, Adam, there's so much talk about Michael Hawkins, and rightfully so. He's kind of, he's reinvigorated this Oklahoma offense to an extent. He's kind of brought a little bit of life back to this Oklahoma football team over the last couple of weeks. But I think that really, when you're talking about the first true freshman to start a Red River game since, I believe it was Troy Aikman, if I'm right on that one, I think that it's unrealistic to expect that Michael Hawkins, go out there and throw for 350 and 4 touchdowns. I don't think that that's something that's going to happen. I think the biggest thing that Michael Hawkins can do to ultimately lead to success for Oklahoma on Saturday, take care of the football, no turnovers, limit the sacks, have a couple of explosive plays with your arms and your legs. And I think that Seth Luttrell, at least I hope Seth Luttrell, I think there's going to be a lot of moving the pocket, get Hawkins out in space to where, if Texas is playing a soft coverage or the easy throws aren't there on the initial read, go get 5 or 6 or 7 yards with your legs and, keep the chains moving, keep this thing going. I think that Texas is going to be very aggressive defensively, especially in the secondary, because if there's one thing that we've seen, through the first 5 games of this season, when you talk about the undersized, wide receivers that Oklahoma's trotting out there, 5'8", 5'9", 5'10" guys, I think that you're going to see a lot of press man coverage from this Texas secondary, trying to lock up our undersized wide receivers, lock them up for a few seconds to give guys like Trey Moore and Anthony Hill an opportunity to get home. And we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. I don't have a whole lot of faith in the receiver core because JJ Hester had a breakout game against Auburn, I guess, 3 catches. What was it? 80 some yards.
Some confidence.
Hopefully that, goes into something. I mean, the guy's been in college forever. So we just haven't seen much yet at this point, other than that one game. Zion Raggins has basically started 4 games at this point, has played a ton. And what does he have? 4 or 5 catches to show for it. It's hard to dog on a guy that's a true freshman, but at a certain point, hey, you've played so many snaps, you got to start contributing something. It's kind of amazing to me that that's what we're going to go with. And, we don't even try some other guys nearly as much. I don't know. I mean, if you're going to be out there and be a complete zero, Ivan Carrion can be a totally different zero, I guess.
Is this the week that we finally get to see Jacoby Johnson at receiver?
That's what Brent seemed to indicate in his press conference today, that they'll have a package for him. I don't know what that means necessarily. Maybe he's just a lead blocker for a rag and screen or something like that. And hey, if that's something, maybe that'll get you a couple successful plays, but it's not going to last very long at that point. Texas will figure that out. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, I think Brennan Thompson, I think he showed some good things in Auburn. I think he was open a lot more than Michael Hawkins realized. And Hawkins is a guy that you would expect to, okay, he's a true freshman. He should be flustered in this situation, but at Auburn, we never saw any of that. Now we didn't quite see him in a do or die situation with 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. We got close, not quite there, but throughout the entirety of that game where Oklahoma really wasn't in control of it, wasn't leading for most of it, we never saw him look flustered. And I don't know if that was because he was just very much on a short leash and wasn't really allowed to do a whole lot necessarily. So I don't know if we give more opportunity for him. Do we start to see those mistakes pile up, turnovers, things like that? But you like what his poise was against Auburn. And if he can bring that same type of poise to the Cotton Bowl in what I think is probably even a crazier environment than playing a road game at Auburn, no disrespect to the Tigers there. But if he can bring that, then, okay, maybe things can start to slow down in start number 2 with more preparation time to find Brennan Thompson for more opportunities, or JJ Hester, whoever it might be.
I spent a lot of time on tonight's episode singing the praises of Texas's defense, and rightfully so. I mean, they're a physical unit. They've got a lot of size. They've got a lot of speed, especially out on the perimeter. But I think that there are a couple of areas where Oklahoma can find some success, and one of those is in the middle of the field. And, Bauer Sharp has his limitations as a blocker, but I think that he's a pretty damn good athlete for his size, and he has an opportunity to make some plays in the passing game. And I think that Texas at times so far this season has struggled covering the middle of the field when they're playing zone coverage. So you might figure out a way to be creative to get Bauer sharp into some of those soft zones in the middle of the field to be able to pick up, 8, 10, 15 yards and keep the drive going. And I also think too, even though it was a true freshman quarterback from Mississippi State, he still had some pretty good success in the quarterback run game. Now, whether it was the design quarterback run game or, making scramble plays when the play broke down, he had some opportunities where he kind of made Texas look a little silly defensively with some of the things he was able to do with his legs. So that's another key factor for Michael Hawkins in the running game. Because I don't think, unless we've just totally turned the corner coming out of the bye week, I don't see Oklahoma being able to sustain 8, 9, 10, 12 play scoring drive consistently for 4 quarters. So you've got to figure out a way, whether it's throwing the deep ball, Taylor Tatum breaking one loose, taking it to the house. You got to figure out a way to generate some explosive plays for Oklahoma to have a chance.
Yeah.
But before we get to our bets, and for all the listeners out there, we save our score prediction for the very end of this. But Adam, one question that I have for you, and listeners chime in on this as well in the chat. 3 things. You've got the roadmap to an Oklahoma win on Saturday, Adam. What 3 things have to happen for Oklahoma to win on Saturday?
For me, I think it's a quick start on offense. If you get the ball first in halftime or at the beginning of the half, I think you have a set number of scripted plays that basically take you down the field. You score a touchdown. You get Michael Hawkins in rhythm early. I think that's key number 1. I think key number 2 is playing incredible football in your middle 8, the last 4 minutes of the first half, first 4 minutes of the second half, and just controlling the game there. And then finding some running success, even if it's 4 yards a carry and it's, Gavin Sawchuk, you take that. I think having some running success there can be tremendous. The defense, they'll get their turnovers. I think if I had a 4th one, I think they need a magic number of 7. Combined sacks and turnovers is 7. They've averaged 6.2 through the first 5 games of this year. So that's very attainable, very reasonable. If they can keep that trend up, whatever the combination is, I think that's going to set them up for a ton of success. So I guess that's kind of 4, and I hope I didn't steal one from you.
I know you took a couple from me. Yeah, the 3 that I had wrote down: win the turnover battle, set yourself up offensively on some short fields, win the middle 8, last 4 of the first half, first 4 coming out of halftime. And then the third one that I wrote down, I think the offensive line is going to play well enough for Oklahoma to do some things offensively. My third one is, at the running back position, somebody step up and be the damn man. We've heard about Gavin Sawchuk. We've seen Javonte Barnes. We haven't seen Caleb Hicks. Sam Franklin's a no-show. We're going to get Taylor Tatum back this week. There's always in these games, whether you're on the winning side or the losing side, there's always 1 or 2 players that emerge that, at least coming out of this game, it's almost a springboard for what the rest of the season could look like for these 2 guys. So if it's Taylor Tatum, if it's Gavin Sawchuk that finally steps up and, shows that he is the guy that we all thought he was going to be when he got on campus, somebody step up and be the damn guy at running back. Make some plays, figure out a way to win the battle at the line of scrimmage. Because like we've seen in this game, Adam, whoever wins the turnover margin and whoever runs the football better, that's usually the one that wins this game 9 times out of 10.
Hype man Harry in the chat adding to a key to the game: have fun. Overrated, underrated, have fun. We'll see if the players are having fun. But I like that one. Drop your score predictions in the chat if you're watching live. We'll feature those here at the end of the show. But before we go into our score prediction for
God, it was a bad week. It's a bad week.
We got to get into our best bets. Now, it's been a bad year for me. I had my first winning week of the season this past Saturday, went 3-2. Thought I might get to 4-1. And I thought at a certain point when Navy was playing Air Force that I might send a letter to a senator or the president and ask that the Navy kicker get sent into an active combat zone because he was missing kicks and the over was in jeopardy, but they pulled it out. So I support the troops there. So on the year, Tyler, 14-16, myself at 11-19. The gap closed just a little bit. It looked like things were going really well for you, and it was going to be out of reach for me, but we're back in reach here. You still have the lead, so you get to go first.
Well, Adam, I'm gonna defer it back to you. You won the previous week, so you started off tonight.
So I will take the Missouri Tigers traveling to Amherst, Massachusetts, take on the UMass Minutemen here. This is an interesting one because UMass has not played a Power 5 opponent yet. They've played a lot of MAC schools, so we don't really have a comparable game to to say what, an SEC team playing UMass would look like. But Tigers favored by 27.5. I think they will absolutely dominate the Minutemen physically. They're much improved under new coach Don Brown, but they're still UMass. They're still not very good. So I think Tigers cover by at least 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, I'm going to go out to the marquee game in the country. It's where College Game Day is going out to Eugene, Oregon. The Buckeyes, the Ducks. I'm staying away from the spread on this one. I think it's currently set at Ohio State minus 3.5 or 4.5, right. Depending on what it's changed over the last couple of hours. But I'm actually going to take the under in this one. Currently, it's set at 52.5 points. I think that Ohio State probably has the best defense in college football right now. And, again, they haven't played the best competition. They haven't faced the best offenses over the last 5 weeks. Obviously, it's going to be an uptick in talent with what Oregon and Dylan Gabriel are going to deploy out there. But I think that Ohio State is going to be able to do enough defensively to hold Oregon down. And on the flip side, I don't have enough faith in Will Howard to be able to go out there and, just light Oregon up. Make a couple big throws down the field. So for this reason, give me the under 52.5.
Known Dylan Gabriel hater, Tyler Burton, is all I heard there. But yes, no, I agree with you on Will Howard. I think he's going to be their downfall at some point. It's just a matter of which team can do that for them. I'm going to go to Clemson, traveling to Wake Forest. Tigers favored by 20.5. I think they'll be able to physically dominate Wake Forest. It is a road game, but I think there will probably be more Clemson fans than Demon Deacon fans there. Fun fact, I may have mentioned this previously, but for the longest time, I thought Cole Kubelik was Cade Klubnik's dad. I just kind of intertwined those two names. I don't know how that happened, but
all right, Dean.
Cade Klubnik playing incredible since that Georgia game. He's been one of the best at explosive plays. So I'll roll with the Tigers.
That's our Dean Blevins moment of the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. All right, Adam, pick number 2 for me. I'm staying in the Big Ten. Penn State going out to L.A. To take on SC and the Trojans. Lincoln Riley just continues to find more and more ways. If anybody hasn't looked up his press conference clip from this past week, go do it. It's just the gift that keeps on giving. Penn State's currently favored by 4.5. They've got one of the best defenses in college football. I think that they're going to be able to limit Miller Moss in the big plays in the passing game. USC is not going to be able to run the football consistently. Give me Drew Aller and James Franklin to go on the road to SC and cover the 4.5 number.
I want you to be right on that. Did you see that Penn State is traveling on Thursday to that game because they have to bus down to Harrisonburg from State College?
So they got to take an hour and a half bus ride just to get to an airport that can take them all the way to California?
Yeah, the airport in State College is not long enough runway to get a plane that can fly all the way to LA. So they either take a small plane and refuel in like Illinois or something, or they bus to Harrisonburg.
Just have a layover on the tarmac in Chicago or something. Yeah, there you go.
I guess kind of unique situation there. My number 3, I'm going to Oregon State. They're traveling to Reno to play the Wolfpack of Nevada. Beavers are 3.5 point favorites here. This one's interesting because Oregon State had a lot of attrition last year, and normally facing up against a Mountain West Conference opponent, even an improved one like Nevada, they'd be huge favorites here. So that's kind of what I'm banking on. It's just enough remnants of Power 5 program here to beat up on the Wolfpack on the road.
I like it. Pick number 3 for me, going out to the Big 12, going out to Provo, side of the Mormons. BYU currently a 4.5 point favorite over Arizona. BYU, one of the sneaky good kind of Cinderella darling teams of the start of this college football season. They're currently undefeated. I like BYU. I thought about taking the over in this matchup, but I kind of revert back to how well BYU played at home against Kansas State. Arizona's going to be walking into a buzzsaw after a pretty tough game against Texas Tech the previous week. Give me BYU minus 4.5.
Have you seen the BYU shirt?
I have not.
So Jake Retzlaff, the quarterback for BYU, is Jewish. So there's a shirt out there that says BY Jew.
Bring your Jew. There you go.
There you go. My number 4, Washington at Iowa. I'm going to take the Hawkeyes to cover 2.5. This is as my wife would call it, a big 11 a.m. kickoff on Fox. And the Huskies just had a really good performance, got beat up, a little bit probably playing Michigan, but got the W there in Seattle. Now has to fly multiple time zones across the country to play a 9 a.m. Pacific time game. This is one reason I also didn't pick that Penn State USC game that you picked. Teams in the Big Ten traveling across multiple time zones like that, I think are like 1-6 on the year, with the only exception being Indiana beating up on UCLA. So I think Washington is the better team, but I think this is a terrible setup for them to play an early game against an Iowa team that's just going to want to drag them into the mud there. So I like the Hawkeyes.
I had that one on my card, but it felt too easy, so I took it off and put it in place of this game. I got Mississippi State going up to Athens, Georgia. Bulldogs currently a huge favorite over Jeff Lebby, Mississippi State. I'm actually going to go the over/under route on this one as well, Adam. Over/under currently set at 53.5. I don't think Mississippi State scores any more than 7, maybe 9 points in this matchup. Georgia's still pissed off. If for anybody, did you see the tweet I sent you earlier this morning about another Georgia player that got arrested for, wasn't speeding this time, it was a little more aggressive, a little worse. But yeah, there's some problems going on at Georgia right now, but I think that they're going to take out some of their frustrations over the last couple of weeks on Mississippi State. This is a get right game for Kirby. Give me the under 53.5. Yeah, I feel good about this one.
Yeah, I like that pick. So last week I trusted the troops. Picking the over on Navy, Traveling Air Force.
He's back on board.
And I really shouldn't do this. I really shouldn't push my luck with the troops. You know, they serve so well. I thank them for their service. I shouldn't ask them for more, but I am going to ask a little bit of Air Force here. Plus 6.5 at New Mexico. Air Force, not a good team. 0-5 against the spread. But I think the best remedy to get their first win against the spread this year is playing the second to last team in rush defense in New Mexico. So, give me the Air Force there.
Adam's back. He's pro USA now. You
can't say I don't support the troops.
Well, it is an election year, so we'll see.
I say what I want to say or what I need to say to get the votes, right?
There you go. Okay, pick number 5 for me. I'm going to Hawaii. Boise State traveling on the road. Broncos take on Hawaii. Boise State currently a 20.5-point favorite. And, you know, Adam, I'm kind of going against the grain here because typically it's not a good recipe to bet on teams that are having to make that long trip, you know, across the pond or the ocean to Hawaii. But Boise State, they've got the best player in America right now. Maybe outside of Travis Hunter, they damn sure have the best running back in college football right now, Ashton Jeanty, who threw 5 games. I think it's 5, maybe it's 6. He's got over 1,000 rushing yards in 5 or 6 games, averaging over 10 yards a carry. He's got 16 touchdowns. So 1 out of every 5 to 6 carries, he scores. So I think that Boise State, the offense is too high powered. I think that they do just enough to be able to score enough points to cover that 20.5 number. Give me the Broncos and the points.
I wonder if you could pick Hawaii versus just Ashton Jeanty. I mean, because he's probably favored alone against Hawaii in the Rainbow Warriors.
I want to say that it was either last week or the week before. There was a prop bet, Ashton Jeanty rushing yards over or under the total number of yards that the other team would put out.
I would not touch that, but I think it hit.
I think it hit too. So
that is very interesting.
Go. That's a fun.
That takes us to our score predictions for OU Texas. Brand Z7 in the chat, 38-17, Texas winning that one. I think we're probably going to be in the similar neighborhood there. Tyler, I'll give you,
what do you got,
your
Adam?
first. I'll give you the opportunity to go first here.
Yeah, you look at this game on paper, you watch the tape, how these two teams have played through the first 5 weeks of the season. There's a reason why Vegas is never wrong. There's a reason why there's so many casinos, there's so many hotels, there's so many lights. Vegas is never really wrong, but I do think that the one instance where you could possibly see something different than what Vegas thinks is going to happen is in a rivalry game, particularly OU Texas. So I just don't think, Adam, that as good as I think Oklahoma is going to come out and play. And again, I think that we're probably the first quarter is probably going to be our best football that we've played all season long. I think that Brent, Zach, Seth Luttrell, I think they're going to have a good game plan together. I just don't think that Oklahoma has enough firepower offensively to be able to keep up with Quinn Ewers. I expect Oklahoma's defense to be able to slow down Quinn Ewers. They're kind of very similar to what we saw against Tennessee. I think that Oklahoma's defense will do enough to give this team a chance to win. But at the end of the day, I just don't have enough confidence. I've got to see it to believe it. I don't think that Oklahoma will be able to do enough offensively for 4 quarters to be able to keep up with Texas. So I'm going to stay right around that 14 number. If I'm damn sure not betting the game, but I'm going to go Texas 34, Oklahoma 20.
This one is hard to measure because in pretty much any other matchup, you can say, okay, what does their rush defense look like versus our rush offense and things like that. And this one, it's okay. It's a rivalry game. Like, how many points do you give or take for that? It's It's a situation where Oklahoma's coming off a bye week with their second week of a quarterback. How many points do you assign for that? It's so hard to measure. And I know people will say, well, throw the records out the window in a rivalry game. This one's always hard to predict. But I just can't sit there and say, okay, I throw my hands up and throw the evidence out and just say, oh, it'll be a close game. Oh, he's going to win by 3, or oh, he's going to lose by 3, or whatever it might be. Just all the evidence points to Texas is a much better put together team. They have the best quarterback here, Michael Hawkins. Although he's shown, a few plays here and there, the offense hasn't changed that much. In the limited amount of, opportunities that we've seen him since taking over the starting quarterback position, the offense hasn't changed that much. It's been kind of the same with a few more explosives pulled in there. So based on the evidence that I have, I can't go anything different than where you are there. I've got Texas winning 34, Oklahoma 17. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I come back here and I'm celebrating next week, saying like, wow, I'm surprised that this offensive line gelled in those 2 weeks. Taylor Tatum broke out. Michael Hawkins was picking apart a Texas defense, and maybe that's in the cards, but I don't think there's very many card combinations that come with that. I think most of them are turning up Texas just in terms of them being a complete team and OU having a complete side of the ball that hasn't shown any ability to move the ball on a regular basis and protect their defense. So for that reason, I've got Oklahoma losing by 17.
Styles make fights. And when you look at the 4 different units that are going to be on the football field, I think the Texas's offense versus Oklahoma's defense, that's probably the most neck and neck equal out of all 4 of these position groups. But you flip it over to the other side, I think the Texas's defense is a little further ahead than where Oklahoma is offensively right now. So, and again, for everybody out there, I don't think that Adam and I are sitting here saying that Oklahoma has no chance. They're going to get run out of the stadium on Saturday afternoon. I just think that Texas, with what they've got right now from a talent standpoint, the veteran guys that are back for this team, especially the quarterback, especially the offensive line, I think that we just think that, Texas is going to be able to do, a little more than enough to be able to, outscore Oklahoma. And I expect Oklahoma's defense to play extremely well. I just don't think offensively we're there yet this season. And I don't think we have enough firepower to keep up with Texas. They're number 1 in the country for a reason. But hey, Sooner Magic is alive and well. We saw it 2 weeks ago. Maybe it'll show its ugly head again in 4 days.
I am sick and tired of hearing Texas fans and Texas media say the same exact things that I just said. I mean, I'm allowed to hate on my team. They're not. But hopefully we.
Well, I think we're realistic, though.
I think it's just realistic in the situation here. Yeah,
there's a lot of other podcasts that are out there. The one I'm talking about particularly. They're all going to pick. They're going to pick Oklahoma to win this game. And again, maybe they're right. Maybe that'll actually come to fruition. I would love to see it. I would love to come back here, 1 week from now, to talk about an Oklahoma win and how that shapes up the rest of the season. But I just think that Texas has too much offensively, and I just don't think that Oklahoma's going to be able to keep up on Saturday afternoon.
Well, everyone, thanks so much for making us a part of your weekly routine, whether you're watching on YouTube live later on or listening on the podcast format as well. We appreciate you, and we'll be back next week to recap this game. Look forward to South Carolina and the rest of the Oklahoma season.